Have you ever made a midnight promise to yourself? The house is quiet, the world is still, and you tell yourself with absolute certainty, tomorrow things will be different. Tomorrow I wake up early. But then the morning comes. The alarm sounds at 6:30 a.m. And it doesn't feel like an invitation to a new day. It sounds like an enemy invasion. Your hand shoots out from under the warm covers. You don't even open your eyes. Snooze, 5 minutes. Snooze again, 10 minutes. Suddenly, it's 7:40 a.m. and you bolt upright with a sickening jolt of adrenaline as if you've just stepped off a ledge. You spend the rest of the day running behind, apologizing, and drowning in a quiet, heavy guilt. If you have ever felt that life isn't necessarily ruined by massive catastrophic problems, but rather eroded by one small repeating habit, then you need to hear the story of Tom. In the small town of Riverside, Tom was a man fighting a losing battle against his own mornings. He wasn't lazy and he wasn't uncaring. He loved his wife Sarah and he adored his young daughter Lily. More than anything, he wanted to be the bedrock of his family, a man they could unequivocally trust. But Tom was trapped in a modern cycle of self-sabotage. Every night, seeking a tiny slice of time just for himself, he would scroll through his phone or watch just one more video until his eyes burned. Every morning, he paid the price. His rushed mornings were a chaotic blur of burnt toast, missing keys, and frantic sprints out the door. He worked as a delivery driver for a local printing shop. It was straightforward work, but in logistics, timing is everything. One Tuesday, the inevitable happened. The client needed those posters by 8 a.m., Tom. You rolled in at 9, his manager said, his voice flat with exhaustion. We lost the account. Tom offered the only currency he had left, apologies. It won't happen again. But it did. A week later, he was late again. His manager didn't yell. He just looked at Tom and delivered a sentence that felt like a physical blow. I can't trust you. I'm sorry. Walking home with his empty lunch bag, Tom felt the weight of his failure. At home, Sarah didn't shout. Shouting doesn't pay the rent. She simply asked, "What will we do now?" Tom promised he would find another job, but his voice sounded hollow even to himself. That evening, the stakes shifted from professional to deeply personal. Lily burst through the door, her hands covered in craft glitter, her eyes shining with pure excitement. "Dad, next Friday is the spring assembly. I'm singing on stage. Miss Parker says parents must come early. The front gate locks at 8:20 a.m., and after that, nobody can get in. Please, Dad, please don't be late." Tom smiled, but panic flared in his chest. He knew his own track record. Yet, looking at his daughter's hopeful face, he made a vow. I promise I will be there early. The following Wednesday was a dress rehearsal. Parents were invited to watch for 10 short minutes. Tom swore he would be there. But that morning, the seductive pull of the snooze button won again. When he finally arrived at the school, sprinting across the lawn, the heavy glass doors were already locked. He saw Lily standing inside, clutching her song sheet. She looked through the glass and saw him gasping for air on the outside. She didn't throw a tantrum. She didn't cry. Her bright smile simply vanished. She lowered her eyes and turned away. That quiet, devastating moment hurt Tom far more than losing his job. On the drive home, the silence in the car was suffocating until Sarah finally whispered, "You didn't just miss a practice, Tom. You missed her trust." That night, sleep refused to come. Every time Tom closed his eyes, he saw Lily turning away from the glass door. At 5:15 a.m., unable to bear the weight of his thoughts, he threw off the covers, muttered, "I can't live like this," and stepped out into the pre-dawn chill. The town of Riverside was entirely different at this hour. The sky was an indigo canvas, the air was crisp, and the world felt incredibly peaceful. On a quiet corner, a warm yellow light spilled onto the sidewalk from the Early Bird Cafe. Tom pushed open the door. An older man was calmly wiping down the counter. "Morning," the man said. "You're up early. That's rare around here." Tom offered a broken smile. "I didn't plan it. I just couldn't sleep." The owner, Mr. Reed, poured a steaming cup of black tea and slid it across the counter. "Sit. You look like you're carrying a stone in your chest." After Tom confessed the lost job, the looming rent, and the broken promises, Mr. Reed studied him carefully. "Let me guess," Mr. Reed said, pointing a weathered finger at Tom. "Late mornings. You have the look of a man who spends his entire life trying to catch up." Tom nodded, desperate. "I promised I'd be in the front row for her assembly on Friday, but I'm terrified I'm going to fail her again. How do I change when my own body refuses to wake up?" Mr. Reed leaned in, his voice dropping to a serious, steady octave. "People think waking up early is about hustle and success. It's not. It is entirely about control. When you wake up late, your day begins with panic, and panic makes you stupid. When you wake up early, your day begins with space, and space makes you smart." Then Mr. Reed laid out a non-negotiable 5-step blueprint.
Cut the night short. Sleep earlier. Stop stealing from tomorrow to fund a mindless tonight. Banish the phone. Put the alarm across the room. Make getting out of bed mandatory. The shock to the system. Put a glass of water beside the phone. Drink it immediately to wake up your internal organs. Remove friction. Lay out your clothes and keys the night before. Command the day. Before touching the chaotic world, take a notebook and write 3 simple lines. Must do, must not do, grateful for. It takes 10 minutes, Mr. Reed said, tapping the counter, but it turns you from a man who reacts into a man who chooses. Tom treated Mr. Reed's advice like a survival manual. He practiced for a week. He put the phone across the room. He drank the cold water. He hated the physical discomfort of leaving his warm bed, but for the first time in years, he started his day without a heavy cloak of shame. Then came Thursday night, the eve of the spring assembly. Lily carefully handed Tom a fragile paper flower she had made. "Dad, can you bring this? I want to hold it on stage." Tom placed the flower directly on top of his car keys. He set his alarm. He set a backup alarm on Sarah's phone. He wrote out his timeline. 6 o'clock, wake. 6:30, breakfast. 7:10, leave. 7:40, arrive. 8:20, gate closes. At 5:52 a.m., Tom's eyes snapped open naturally. He reached for his phone, only to realize it had completely died in the night. The charging cable was loose. The old Tom would have frozen in absolute terror. The new Tom simply took a breath, plugged it in, activated Sarah's backup alarm, and calmly said out loud, "We have time." At 7:05 a.m., he stepped outside, ready to drive to the school. But the universe decided to test him. A torrential, heavy rain was falling, slicking the streets and slowing traffic to a crawl. Realizing his car was low on fuel and unwilling to risk breaking down in traffic, Tom made a strategic pivot. He would take the public bus. He walked through the pouring rain to the bus stop, only to find a bright yellow sign zip-tied to the pole. "Main road closed, detour." Panic fluttered in his stomach. He checked his watch, 7:12 a.m. Because he had built a massive buffer of time, he didn't need to stress. He caught the rerouted bus. But halfway to the school, the bus shuddered, hissed, and died. The driver stood up, apologizing for an engine failure. As parents around him began shouting and aggressively checking their watches, Tom didn't hesitate. He stepped off the dead bus into the pouring rain, pulled his jacket tight, and started running. At 8:48 a.m., soaked to the bone, he reached the perimeter of the school, only to find police lights flashing. The main road to the gate was heavily flooded. An officer was turning people away. Parents were groaning, some giving up and heading home. Old Tom would have accepted defeat, but new Tom had spent the last week walking the town at 6 a.m. He had learned the geography of Riverside when it was empty. He didn't need luck, he had memory. He knew a narrow, hidden alleyway behind the local library that bypassed the flooded street. At 8:05 a.m., Tom walked through the school gates. He wasn't late. He wasn't even barely on time. He was exactly 15 minutes early. Those 15 minutes felt like a luxury. Walking into the auditorium, Tom noticed Lily's teacher, Miss Parker, drop a heavy box of programs. Because Tom wasn't sprinting in a blind panic, he had the mental bandwidth to see her struggle. He immediately knelt down to help gather the scattered papers.
"Thank you," she said, breathless. "Most people arrive in such a rush they don't see anything at all. Lily has been terrified you wouldn't make it." Tom stood up, handing her the stack. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Tom took his seat in the dead center of the front row. He was soaking wet, his legs ached, but his mind was remarkably clear. At 8:20 a.m. on the dot, the heavy doors locked with a loud click. For the first time in his life, Tom was on the right side of a closing door. The curtain rose, the children shuffled out. Lily walked to the center of the stage, her eyes frantically scanning the dark crowd. For a second, her shoulders were tense, her face pale. Then she saw him. Her shoulders dropped. A massive, radiant smile broke across her face, like a light switching on in a dark room. Tom smiled back and gently held up the delicate paper flower. He could visibly see the courage pour into his daughter. She sang beautifully, bravely, and loudly. As they were leaving the auditorium, a sharply dressed man intercepted Tom. "Excuse me," the man said. "I'm Mr. Bennett. I run a regional delivery company. I saw how you handled yourself out there, helping the teacher, staying completely calm while everyone else was losing their minds. I need reliable drivers for our 5 a.m. commercial routes. Most guys can't handle the early starts, but you look like a man who can." Tom took the business card, suppressing a laugh at the sheer irony of it all. "I can," Tom said firmly. "I wake up early now." Later that afternoon, the rain cleared and Tom walked back into the Early Bird Cafe. He told Mr. Reed everything: the dead phone, the rain, the broken bus, the flooded road, the front row, Lily's smile, and Mr. Bennett's job offer. "So," Mr. Reed said, wiping down a mug, "what did you learn?" Tom looked at his hands and smiled. Waking up early didn't make the rain stop, it didn't fix the broken bus, and it didn't magically remove my problems. He looked up, meeting Mr. Reed's eyes. "But it gave me time. Time gave me choices, and choices gave me a win. When I woke up late, I lost jobs and I broke promises. When I woke up early, I gained calm. And that calm allowed me to show up for the people who needed me." The profound truth of the morning is this: conquering the snooze button isn't about grinding harder or sacrificing rest. It is about seizing control. Because when you control your morning, you don't just arrive at work on time, you arrive for the people you love, and you create the space to capture the moments that change your life.